Thank you, everyone, for coming. My distinguished panelists, thank you so much. Political leaders repeatedly fail to take counsel of the youth. Youth, young people, women, and physically different people are excluded from these conversations. So what do we do in sense of bringing them to the table and making their voice being heard? So I'll send a question to Vishkant. So tell us, by the way, the mic is by the either side of the hall. So if you have any questions, feel free to approach the mic. And Vishkant, this is for you.
Okay, thanks so much.
How can we create an enabling environment that fosters a youth-focused or youth-powered development pathway?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, and a very good afternoon to all. So a lot of thoughts on this, and very glad that we have this panel happening at this conference at Cape Town Conversations. As we were discussing before the session, like how do we even define youth? The way it's defined, the way the age group we look at varies from region to region. But of course, we know that unanimously across the world, the role of the youth has never been more important. And especially given that if we look at the global south, continents like Asia, Africa, which have such a huge youth population. The question specifically asks about how to tap the entrepreneurial and innovative spirit of young individuals. And I feel that as much as now we talk about say entrepreneurship and the role of young people in setting up new institutions, new organizations, I think even fostering the ability to be an intrapreneur is really, really important. As someone who is working with a multilateral development bank, which I would say hosts the demographic is very, or the demography rather, is quite that of, it's an old man's job. I think a lot of the development and policy spaces, the average age group is much, much older. We need more younger voices. And within existing older, mature institutions, we need to have people who are intrapreneurial, who can be part of newer teams, newer agendas that are being set. So for example, the work that I'm currently involved with at ADB is at the intersection of climate, health, and resilience. When we think of climate, just energy transition, industries, all sectors come to mind. But unfortunately, health has been a laggard till now. So what the impact of climate has on health, the impact of health sector on climate. So my point being is, I found a sweet spot where I'm part of a team that's trying to move the agenda, move the needle, as ADB is evolving towards being a climate bank. So that's one instance. My journey has included being part of many youth communities, such as the Global Shapers community, which is a World Economic Forum under 30 platform, which has been a lovely, lovely ecosystem to test, fine-tune my leadership skills, my managerial abilities, to start social impact projects in my city hub at a national, regional, and global level. So I think these spaces and platforms, give young people a voice, and we need more of it. And happy to elaborate further, but we'll pause for now.
Thank you so much. Sarah.
Yeah, I can add more. My name is Sarah. I'm an investor based in Silicon Valley. So my perspective is a little bit different because when I come to young people, I think about how we can get them ready to be an entrepreneur that are ready for investors to invest. So based on my experience, when it comes to investment for a new entrepreneur, mostly young people in their 20s, if you look at Silicon Valley, most of the money go to people like that just graduated from college. We barely, it's quite ageist when it comes to investment in Silicon Valley. We barely invest on people over 40. And the reason is we think that like new entrepreneurs that don't even have experience as an entrepreneur, they're hustlers. They go out and like they really try different things. And if you give them opportunity, they will make it happen. And we have a lot of role models, right? If you look at the tech sector in Silicon Valley, most of the very big companies were started with people who were college dropout people, or like they were very young when they started their company and they didn't have any experience as an entrepreneur. But at the same time, we really give them the opportunity to take risks. So in order to really encourage young people to become a good entrepreneur, the big thing is giving them this opportunity to take risk. And I noticed that in other countries that I work, I've done work in Middle East, in Oman, in also Mexico. A lot of investors, they are not very, when it comes to risk, they don't want to take the risk. And it's very important to build an ecosystem that like want to invest on young people, even without education and entrepreneurship background.
Thank you so much. So basically, you're saying there should be policies that are responsive and impactful that will help in pushing the youth forward, isn't it?
Right. It's policies, it's investment that some of them comes from the private sector, right? So private sector needs to be more involved in that. And also a lot of it comes from the government. So the government needs to take the risk, put the money, like an investment on young entrepreneur, even people who don't have that much experience. Because if you really look at like very successful companies right now, most of them have been started by very, very young people with no experience. So it's very important to take the risk and put the investment on them.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was a brilliant contribution. Cigay, over to you.
First of all, I'm very pleased to be here in South Africa. It's my first visit. It's a very beautiful place. Thank you to the organizers for the great hospitality. I come from a small country called Bhutan, located between India and China, up in the Himalayas. We are a country of just 700,000. So I'd like to share some perspectives on the youth skilling and the kind of entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystem that we have tried to build in Bhutan. But before going into that, I would also like to reflect that in this conference, we are talking about the kind of future that we want to build for the Global South. And without talking about youth, I think this conversation is not complete, because when we think of future, it's the youth that will actually create the future, and they are the main drivers of the future that we are going to have. Because youth, I think they really are the future of any nation or the future of the continent. For instance, if you talk about Africa. And while it is true for, I think, the whole world over, and especially for the Global South, I think this is even more true because the Global South has a very, very large youth population. And this morning, we heard the Madam Minister say that 70% of the population of Africa is actually below the age of 30 years. And if I do a small calculation, that would represent around 1 billion people. So now, in order to give the importance that the youth deserve, I would like to quickly highlight 3 key points. I'll be fast with that. Firstly, I think education and skilling are very important. Education for the long term and skilling for the short term, to give them the skills they need to earn the right, kind of livelihood that they can make. But when it comes to education, I think if we are really serious about building a good future, then education would be key. And I was remembering about, for example, India. In the 1960s, India created Indian Institute of Technologies, IITs. And IITs have contributed a lot to the progress and development of India. And I think that's an example that Africa as a whole could probably look at. And next, we need to have good and strong, vibrant entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystem. My colleagues on the panel have a lot of, most of them have a lot of experience in this sector, and I think they can contribute on that. And third, I would like to mention that our young people need a lot of protection and care. They are growing up in a world that is very uncertain and chaotic, and there is a lot more distractions compared to the time that we grew up in. So I think that that's something that we should not forget. We need to guide them properly, not let them fall into the wrong track or drugs. So these are the 3 points I would like to highlight now, and at that for now.
Thank you so much, Cigay. Amo.
So first and foremost, the former South African Minister of Finance, I feel like gave me the permission to start off with a controversial statement. What is wrong with this room and what is wrong with this panel? First and foremost, the people speaking about the youth movement, perhaps with the exception of my friend from Delhi, clearly do not represent the youth cohort. And there aren't as many people in this room as the other more quote-unquote serious panels. And I perhaps should have done a coin drop, Shub, and said, we're gonna give a coin drop to everyone who joins it, I'll drop it in your wallet. So I needed to raise that first and foremost, because just because we make it look fun, gamers, gigsters, and go shopping, which are the very pillars of the global digital economy, at least in Southeast Asia, which represents 600 million people, and 40% of all the global GDP, I never get tired of saying this, which is just in less than 7 years' time, is going to be in Southeast Asia. Our average age is 25 to 29 years old. And how are we driving the global digital economy revolution? We game, we do gigs, and also we love to go shopping. So just very quickly, Digital Pilipinas and Digital ASEAN is an ecosystem builder, which I'm sure Sarah would agree, 10 to 15 years ago, our parents didn't send us to college thinking, go Sarah, be a VC, or go Amor, be an ecosystem builder. We either had to be a lawyer or a doctor. But now, we are mostly ecosystem builders, and let me tell you about why ASEAN youth matters. First is our gaming economy. I'm not talking about regulated gambling. I'm talking about esports, for example. Indonesia and the Philippines, who together comprises 400 million people, we are tops when it comes to Mobile Legends or esports. And you know, don't sneeze at it. They make serious money. They actually bring, this is a commonality that we have with Brazil, which is actually one of the reasons why we celebrate Brazil being the next president of G20. Next, I'll give you some top lines, and then I turn it over, would be gigsters, right? When we were all growing up, gigsters, or racketeers as they call, are looked down upon. 2 million of the gigsters in the world are in the Philippines. And despite the fact that they make serious money, they're unbanked, and they don't have a digital financial credit. Last but not least, if that is not fun for you, e-commerce. We're the fastest growing. We are also #1 for social e-commerce in TikTok, and we make serious money. More on that later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amo. Thank you so much, Amo.
Those who clap their hands, they're part of the youth cohort. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amo. We still need to go back to you as well. Given your background on digital technology and how you assist the unbanked individuals by gaming. So I want you to just speak on this question. How can youth-led initiatives be supported despite the persisting challenges of socioeconomic inequality and the digital divide?
By the way, I just have
minutes.
to make a special exception for our incredible moderator. He is a regulator from Nigeria. And you know why I find that interesting? Whenever you talk about clearly from a fine lady from Nigeria. When you talk about gaming, right, or crypto, which is probably because of FTX and Binance has become verboten, right? There are 3 countries that come to mind. 2 are from Southeast Asia: Vietnam, Philippines, and Nigeria, right? So what are the challenges? Number 1 is in the case, for example, of our gamers. Although they make serious money, you may or may not have heard of Axie Infinity, a game coming from Vietnam that at its peak created a guild economy that allowed for the poorest of the poor to make as much as $2,000 a month. If that's not financial inclusion for you, that's led by the youth, I do not know. The problem is our traditional banking institutions. They do not recognize assets other than fiat. So these very productive segments of the society continue to be unbanked. They're not given visas. They don't even have emergency insurance. Second, in the case, for example, of gaming, e-commerce, for example, same problems we have. You know, a TikTok influencer, are they being taken seriously? They can't even take out a banking loan, right? And last but not the least, so gamers and gigsters, more importantly, are content creators. The creative digital economy is probably one of the biggest drivers. In Indonesia and in the Philippines, we love our culture tech. We love K-pop. We love J-pop, right? And despite how much fun we make it sound like, it's serious money. The entire economy of South Korea is actually predicated on culture tech. 50 years ago, they were some of the poorest regions in the world, and yet in 50 years' time, they were able to turn it around with the creative digital economy. So I'll just leave it there.
Thank you so much, Amo. I'll pass on to you, Cigay, given your expertise on skills development, and also I need to speak on that.
I would like to add a bit to that. So Amo was talking about the gigsters. So the freelance economy, the gig economy is very huge. And in Asia, Southeast and South Asia, I think it's a big thing. Like in Bangladesh, there are a lot of people, a lot of young people who make their living in the gig economy by being freelancers. And likewise in Bhutan, although we are a country of just 700,000, we have been providing skilling trainings to the youth so that they can take part in the gig economy and make their earning online. So I think this is a big opportunity that is there. And the other important thing in relation to that is there are a lot of youth who also lack the digital skills. In this day and age, it's very important to have not only literacy, but the digital literacy. So in order for them to upskill and take part in the gig economy, I think the first step that we need to take is to make them digitally literate. If there are, in different countries, if there are youth who need that.
Awareness is key, yeah, please.
Okay, so just to jump in there and to change the lens a little bit, because I know the digital divide has been spoken about, I'd like to highlight the socioeconomic inequality piece a bit. As someone coming from India, 1.4 billion people, huge number of people have moved up, into the middle class, but lot many more who are rising up the socioeconomic ladder. Within that, the aspect of women, because we know 50% of our population are girls and women. All the more important as talking about youth-led development, as was said, investing young, right? Investing young, training them young. For a lot of the countries and societies, even now, investing in girls is not seen as a priority, unfortunately, even if things are changing. So I think having a youth-first perspective, women-led development, which has been a huge agenda for India, especially during the G20 presidency, is very, very critical. And the idea of training and mapping. So as you're investing in them, in their educational skill journey, their leadership journey, how are they moving in their life cycle? If we think of talking about, the creator economy, the gig economy, even the way we look at jobs or like careers has fundamentally, radically changed from before, right? Going forward, even the concept of probably job descriptions is slowly evolving, and now people are talking about job creation, like really thinking of how you want to design your career and how you want to, design a role for yourself in an institution. So, and as we know, majority of the jobs in the future are not even those that we can, that we know of. They're going to be, roles that have not been thought of before. So I think training people across different socioeconomic groups, especially for countries like India, which have so much diversity. We have huge number of tribal communities. We have so many other, rural communities. So making sure that opportunities are also decentralized, is very, very important. And to that, an important point that I wanted to add was even the bit about leadership, especially since we're at this forum, which is about, governance globally. We're talking about the global South. How are we training young people to have, to 20, 30 years down the line, be in positions of, senior leadership, to live in a world where they are trained to have high, cultural quotient. It's not just about IQ, EQ now, it's about even being culturally sensitive, having the ability to navigate a world which is much more diverse and complex, right? So I think all of this becomes very important. If you think of like the budget we have for the youth in our countries, it's still such a small amount which needs to be beefed up. So I think those are some of my thoughts there.
Thank you so much.
I would also just want to add one point which I'm trying to recollect is that, especially being prepared for VUCA events like COVID, right? So how do we think about being prepared for Black Swan events? Because again, the youth are one of the first few to be hit by them.
Thank you so much.
I want to add to your point about education. What I noticed when it comes to entrepreneurship, as I mentioned, that's my expertise, is, in different countries that I worked in, people are really focusing on education when it comes to universities, which is great. And even in the US, except a couple of universities like Stanford and MIT that are really focusing on entrepreneurship, even top universities are not really good when it comes to entrepreneurship. They're very academic, and they're like, okay, this is, you're going to get a job after this university. What we focus in Middle East and other countries that really work is creating innovation centers. I was here yesterday, and I checked the innovation city in Cape Town, and I was very impressed that they are creating that ecosystem here, because we can't really rely only on university and government, and we need to create accelerator communities and also make it cool and fun, because entrepreneurship for a lot of people can be lonely. Also, it's still a lot of families don't want their kids to be an entrepreneur. Like culturally, it's not cool in a lot of countries. Even in the US, like being a nerd 20 years ago was not a cool thing. So we changed that narrative to make it cool, fun. Also the community, make it like easier to be an entrepreneur. We talked before the panel about Bhutan, and he mentioned that they're creating that accelerator in Bhutan to create like an environment for entrepreneurs to really thrive, because they're not in university anymore. So where do they get their education? Where can be more trained, right? In India, I've seen there are so many accelerators and incubator to help entrepreneurs. So, and what I saw in South Africa so far, it's very up and coming. So it's very important to focus on that. And I'm sure with the focus that right now Cape Town has for entrepreneurship, it can really solve a lot of unemployment issues that we see in South Africa, because there's a lot of young people here that they don't know what to do. So if we support them to be an entrepreneur, they don't really, like being an entrepreneur, you don't have to have a PhD. You can start even like if you don't have a high school diploma, you can like learn, but you have to have that support. And these innovation cities need to get like young local people to come. Unfortunately, what I saw is like a lot of like foreigners coming to these things. So how can we get the local South African to come and be part of this and be trained?
Thank you so much. That was a very good contribution. You're talking about mentorship, social capital, and the government should also make make policies that can give the youth opportunities to have an enabling environment to thrive. So with this, I'll pose a solution question to Cigay. This is for you. Yeah, no problem, it's all right. What strategies can governments, educational institutions, and organizations implement to provide comprehensive education, skill training, and inclusive opportunity that empower youth and individuals as well? So just 3 minutes, then.
Okay, I'll be quick with that. So I think most of the countries have their own education and skilling program in place. So for instance, in Bhutan, there is the normal school and college education system, and then there is TVET. In addition to that, there is nationwide skilling program to provide skilling to the out-of-school unemployed youths. Otherwise, these out-of-school unemployed youths, they get left out. So I think in order to target all the youth, I think that kind of program is important. And from our experience, this has been quite, I would say, productive. But at the same time, I would also like to mention here that often you get criticism saying that you are providing so much trainings, where are the youth employed? But generally, if you look at it from the percentage point of view, I feel that it may be similar in most countries. So the percentages are not high. But at the same time, these programs are needed because these programs ultimately are able to change the lives of quite a number of youths, while the percentages might not come out to be very high. So I feel that this kind of skilling programs are very important. And the other point that I would like to mention here is the importance of building the ecosystem. I think the ecosystem for skilling and the ecosystem for promoting entrepreneurship and innovation is very important. For instance, in Bhutan, we started with a small tech park and the technology incubator within the tech park. And that has really helped. And there are other players as well, both government as well as NGOs in the sector. All these working together, to create a vibrant ecosystem, I think is very important. And last but not the least, I would like to mention here that access to finance is very important for these youths. And in most countries, I think access to finance is a challenge, and it has been the same in Bhutan. Maybe my co-panelists can share their thoughts later on. So I will stop at that. Thank you.
Yes. There is one aspect also, if I may say, in the digital revolution that is being led by the youth, that brings together ASEAN and also Africa, and that is the movement of money. So you hear about M-Pesa, the groundbreaking M-Pesa, right? It was only a matter of years when the first e-money came out in Southeast Asia, specifically the Philippines, as a function of the global diaspora of all the migrant workers from all over the world. 1-2 years after, M-Pesa followed. The point is, we are mobile first. It doesn't have to be your fancy phones. It could be a feature phone. But how many of you in the audience carry at least 2 phones? Raise your hand. Clearly a youthful market. In Asia, for example, in the Philippines, we have a population of 115 million people. Guess how many mobile phone numbers there are? 168. So for 168 million, so for every Filipino born, it actually comes with a mobile line. The thing I'm saying is the mobile digital revolution is being led by the youth, and it's being led by ASEAN. And that is actually what gave rise to fintech. Africa, for me, is one of the hubs. It's ground zero of fintech with M-Pesa. The fastest growing fintech market in the world is ASEAN. I mean, Nigeria is actually leading it. So I think financial inclusion is being led by the youth, not by central bankers coming from Switzerland, but rather in both Africa and also Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll jump on to you.
Okay. So a few points to this. I think from different points of government, private sector, so on, as we've seen, whenever there's a crisis, the youth is the first to either lead the way or take a stance, be it the Arab Spring movement, the climate strike, action movement, so on and so forth. I think for public institutions, setting up youth advisory councils, youth sounding boards is one very tangible thing they can do. And you see this around the world. EU is doing it. A lot of progressive governments are doing that. We need more of it. I think second, and I'm trying to focus on, since the topic of this panel is youth-led, youth-powered development. So I'm talking more from a leadership point of view. I think governments and private sector really need to fund more leadership training programs for young people. The younger you train them, the easier it is to groom them, cultivate them, in all ways. And the world that we're living in, we need programs which bridge the best of the West and the East. How can we have programs which allow for cross-pollination of ideas and communities across the world? Now with technology, we can have somebody sitting in a very rural village having a buddy system with someone in the US, right? So the boundaries of having to be in an urban space or having to have access to certain resources is also diluting. So how can we tap on that? I think third, I would say, the role of innovation labs, tinkering labs, accelerators. In India, particularly the past decade, there has been a huge surge, so that's great. But then how do we even focus on hand-holding entrepreneurs when things don't work? As we know, 1 in 10 entrepreneurs only succeed. So how can we help in helping them pivot to other opportunities? So I think those support systems are also very important. So those are some tangible points.
Thank you so much, Vaskant.
Yeah, I wanted to add to your point about how we can support entrepreneurs who are not successful. And that's the big part that Silicon Valley, I think, it's very successful when it comes to entrepreneurship because we celebrate failure. So in our culture, it's like, oh, you had a startup, it didn't work, you can try again. Like, it's actually, we really celebrate that, and it's a little bit cultural. I know that, I'm originally from Iran, and in my country, like, we don't celebrate failure. You're like, oh, you're a loser, like, you couldn't make it happen. But it's very important for the youth to not be scared of trying. And that's a little bit cultural, and accelerator and incubator are a very important part of it to, like, create that culture that, like, hey, if you're not successful, we are here for you, because there is no other place for an entrepreneur to go. They're not in university. They don't have their friends around when they're an entrepreneur. They have to have a space when they are not successful so they can try again, right? And they don't feel like they can't fail, because without failure, there is no way for entrepreneurs to be there. Very important to build that culture.
Just one quick point there. I also want to add
30 seconds, please.
That in today's day and age, we really need to create programs that are multidisciplinary, rather anti-disciplinary. Those old school ways of thinking of this is my stream or this is my background, those are just going to break down. So how do we train people to have transferable skills? That is super important.
Just 1 second.
Yeah.
I just want to ask if we have any questions from the audience so we can take questions. Thank you so much. So just please welcome to the mic.
Thank you very much. I want to pose a question to Sarah. I think.
Sorry, excuse me. Can you speak louder? Thank you so much.
Okay. I want to pose a question to Sarah. You have captured our crisis here in South Africa very well. Currently, we are sitting on 31.9% in terms of unemployment. And majority of those people are young people. Majority of them are from the rural areas. I've heard you said you came to Cape Town, you saw one innovation center, and you are happy about that. But the fact of the matter is that in rural areas, Cape Town is just an urban area. In rural areas, those innovation centers are not there. It's unfortunately. But then the question I want to check with you is that what programs do you have in Silicon Valley to support a rural youth in terms of those hubs and entrepreneurship? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Program Director. Maybe mine is not necessarily a question, but to echo the views based on the deliberations from the panel. I think I'm going to speak on the perspective of South Africans. The issue in my country is not the strategy, neither the issue in my country is not the willingness to actually thrive and revive the economy. By economy, I'm extending to the fact that you deal with the issue of race and gender and etc. But the issue in South Africa is that you can't speak about strategy and policies without mentioning the issue of race. Why do I say this? I think in South Africa, we've got the best policies in the world. I mean, the International Labour Organization have overemphasized that fact. But the issue in South Africa is about how do we go about breaking the barriers. And the barriers that we have in South Africa has to do with race. There is an element of fear among black South Africans. They develop strong policies, but because they're scared of whiteness. They're scared of whiteness. There is no way that in South Africa, the majority of the people who are exempted, in other words, who are not part of the economic mainstream are black in particular, but the dominance is black. And if you go to parliament, the threshold of the representation is actually black. Those are the policy makers. Those are the constitutionalists of this country. And you ask yourself, why then, if you got the best strategies in the world, not implement those strategies? It's the issue of race. They're scared of whiteness. And everybody else is fearing this element in the room. To first, whenever you want to address the social ills of the country, you have to deal with the issue of race in South Africa. Unfortunately, we've got the best policies in the country, but we whether you like it or not, the false dichotomy which we often have in this country is to say policies versus implementation and omitting to exclude the issue of race. Whiteness in this country is feared. And I don't think I must blame black people. It's not their fault. It's something that has been instilled over the years. And it's something that they're scared to get out of. Right? The president that is sitting today is a black person, and we've got total power in terms of implementing those policies. But because we were made to believe that as black people, we can't do it without the presence of whiteness. And I think we at a stage where we have to be honest with one another.
Thank you so much.
So that we are able to address the social ills of this country as coordinated actors acting consciously to address the issues of South Africans without the issues of having to be scared of race.
Thank you so much.
You,
yeah. Sorry, open it.
Thank you, Program Director. The name is Kifenzo Mkari once again from the OR Tambo School of Leadership. I would like to engage the brother on the questions that he raised, but we'll do it outside because I think there are fundamental flaws in some of his arguments that need to be addressed. Nonetheless, I think I appreciate Ama's, thinking out of the box, which essentially says to us, part of the problem with the current political system is that it is afraid of what it can't regulate, right? So every time young people come with these out-of-the-box initiatives, there's some element of fear in the disruption that comes with it. And I mean, Amma was correct. You can even see it in the setup. Why is it when young people are a panel, some people have to go upstairs? Why don't they want to hear some of these ideas? But I think also on the issue asked of how can we ensure massive education of young people, it has been addressed a bit, but I want to rehash that we need to rethink and redesign the systems of learning, teaching and learning. Because currently, the education system, the way it's set up, particularly in the global south, it does not allow for innovative thinking. It's always playing catch up. So we need to really think about what kind of new methods of teaching and learning do we adopt in order to ensure that we can empower young people to come up with more of these innovative ideas. Lastly, I think that young people should be at the center of building global visions, regional visions, as well as national visions. Because if there are some people who are sitting at the UN who can't relate with us and are giving us Agenda 2063, for me, it doesn't make sense. At the center of each vision that we build, it's young people that should be given the opportunity to input so that we can understand, as these visions are adopted, our roles and responsibilities. But to play a devil's advocate in closing, I think we are also at fault because we are not systematically organized and we are not well mobilized. We are as if waiting for these things to come to us. We're waiting for people to create space for us. So in closing, let us go back, organize, mobilize, so that we can sit at the right tables. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Final
There
thoughts.
ain't much time, so 60 seconds per starts now. What do we do together? Talk is cheap. It's important that we decide what we're going to do after this. First and foremost, in Digital Pilipinas, we're looking to create a financial digital footprint for gamers and gigsters, so they actually get loans, they get insurance, they get health coverage. Second, we just rolled out our ASEAN Startup and SME Village. Let's get the youth to solve the problems of industry via hackathon and pitch fests. Last but not the least is, and a very important realization for me over the weekend, is that in all our important conversations, we must at least embed someone who is actually from the youth, right? 19 years old is the average age in Africa. Clearly, none of us is 19 years old. And in the case of ASEAN, the average age is 25. So inclusion is not just about poverty porn. It is actually about the underrepresentation of important regions like ASEAN and also of the youth sector. Mabuhay po, maraming salamat.
Sarah.
Yes, I wanted to answer the question about creating innovation centers in places that we don't have access to right now. What I've noticed in my experience is having even a couple of people in the community that encourage the entrepreneurial spirit of like take risk in those places will really affect the whole community. If you have only one or two people who like out there and like really try to take care of entrepreneurs, the new entrepreneurs in those regions, slowly build up the culture and the community. And that's the only way at the beginning until we can really go to those places and have innovation centers and have communities to be able to really help new entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much. Vaskant, do you have any?
So I'd like to end by coming back to the climate and health space. As we know, as young people and people from the global south, though we haven't contributed to the problem, but we'll be the ones facing the brunt of it. Those of you who are interested, we're doing some exciting stuff at COP28. If any of you are there, we're launching a climate and health initiative. This is being led by the Asian Development Bank, but we have other member countries and development institutions. So if any of you are interested in being part of it and knowing more, happy to throw light. We're looking at how to build bankable projects, so on and so forth. And secondly, looking at nature-based solutions and youth for, or rather generation restoration is another area. So anyone's
so much.
interested,
20
happy
seconds,
to
please.
chat further.
Okay. Firstly, I couldn't mention FDI before, so one of the ways to create opportunities is also to have FDI in the company. For instance, I'm serving as a director of a FDI company from Switzerland in Bhutan. And lastly, I would like to mention that whatever we do, be globally relevant, but be locally rooted. So in Bhutan, for instance, we follow the philosophy of gross national happiness, which is about balancing material pursuit with psychological well-being. Thank you.
Thank you so much. With this, we close the session. And thank everyone for taking out time despite your tight schedule to join the session. And thank you.